Okay, so you can see your application was saved, and we're moving on to the next section about parents' financial information. So the question is, have your parents filed a tax return? Already completed means that you've already submitted a tax return. Will file means that I haven't done it yet, but I intend to. Not going to file means that I don't have enough income to have to file a tax return, so I'm not going to file that. It is perfectly acceptable to estimate your information and use that will file status. When you do that, you will be asked to come back at a later point after the tax return has been filed and update the information on your FAFSA. But in order to meet schools' application deadlines, many people have to use that will file or estimated status. If you and your parents are filling out the FAFSA after the tax return has been completed, you'll choose this already completed option, and you'll be presented with the option to pull that IRS data directly from the IRS. The Department of Education likes this because then we know that data has been verified. It may mean that your school won't have to collect a tax return from you later. So if you can use this IRS data retrieval tool, that is a helpful thing in the long run. So if the tax return was not an amended return, if it is not a Puerto Rican or a foreign tax return, and if it was filed more than 3 weeks ago electronically, or even longer ago if it was on paper, if you can say no to all of those questions, then you can retrieve the data directly from the IRS. But we'll continue as if we hadn't done that. This question is, what is the status going to be when they do file a tax return? And if you're unsure, you can look at the tax return from the previous year to understand what the status has been. Most people, that doesn't change from year to year. So we're going to use married, filed a joint return, which is a pretty typical status. Okay, so you can see we're entering the parents' financial information now. We've said that our parents are going to file, and it is a good idea to pull out the most recent tax return you do have and use that to make your estimates, to estimate the income that you're going to be using. There are also these little worksheets that help you do that along the way. So the question is, what kind of income tax return will they file? Whether it's the short form or the standard form, or if they live outside of the country. So we're going to use the IRS 1040 as sort of a standard answer. What was the adjusted gross income? And it's telling you this amount can be found on the IRS 1040 line 37. So again, you can refer to the tax return from the previous year to get an estimate. This little worksheet will help you figure out what that is. The adjusted gross income is a technical term from a tax return, which really just means the total of wages, salaries, interest income, dividends, other taxable income, and it's telling you here in the parentheses what that might be, and then adjustments to income, and again it's telling you what those might be here. So if you're looking at the tax return from the year before, that gives you a good hint of what to put in there. So I'm actually just going to put a number in here to allow us to keep going. And then although we've provided that adjusted gross income, we're asking questions about how much did each of your parents earn from working? What were their wages? And this is separated out for each parent. So of that adjusted gross income of $50,000, let's say parent 1 made $20,000 and the other parent made $25,000. And maybe they had $5,000 of other kinds of income. This question confuses a lot of people about a dislocated worker status. So here in the hints and tips, it gives you some information about exactly what dislocated worker status is. If you have a parent who's unemployed, look at that carefully to see if they meet that definition. But hopefully you're not having to deal with that. This next question is, how much did your parents actually have to pay in federal income taxes? Or how much do you estimate they will have to pay? And this isn't necessarily the same as what's been withheld on their W-2s. It's how much do they estimate they will have to pay in taxes. So this is a good one to look at. The 2012 tax return, this tells you which line number will tell you how much was actually paid in taxes. There's some details over here on the right about how to calculate that tax information. And we're just going to say, for purposes of this example, we're going to put in $1,500. This is how many exemptions did your parents claim on the tax return. It's usually the same as household size, but something to look at carefully. This next section is about additional financial information for the parents. Remember, we're always talking about the parents here. Did they take the American Opportunity Tax Credit or Lifetime Learning Tax Credit? And that would only apply if you, for example, have an older sibling who was in college last year. Did parents pay child support for support of another family? Did parents have earnings related to work study that was reported on their tax return? That's what these questions are looking at. And if you need more detail, more questions, right here, you'll get more information about those. And then sources of untaxed income. Did your parents make payments to a tax-deferred pension or retirement savings plan? So many families can answer yes to this question. We get this information from your W-2, your parents' W-2s. Will let you know whether they had this kind of information. So they would put the dollar amount in here. So if they're making contributions toward an individual retirement account, that would be included. If parents are receiving child support, that information should be reported here. So again, you can find help for each one of these questions. When you click the box, it gives you more information up here to the right. This question, as of today, does the total amount of your parents' assets exceed $38,000, $38,500 in this case? That number is based on the age of the parents. There's a minimum amount of parents' assets that are protected in the analysis, so we won't even look at the parents' assets in this case if they're less than $38,000. So on the FAFSA, we've decided we're not even going to ask you the questions if your total assets are less than that. So these are the types of assets that need to be included. We're really looking at, as of the day that you're filling out the FAFSA, how much money do your parents have in cash, savings, checking accounts? If they have other investments, that would be reported here. You should not be including here the information about the home in which you and your parents live. Other investment information, you can see the details here. So if you can say, no, my parents don't have assets that are greater than that amount, then you can just move on. If you have to say yes, then these three questions are presented. As of today, the day you're filling out the FAFSA, what's the current balance in checking and savings accounts? And if you're concerned about the cash flow in your savings account, you can enter an average amount that's in your savings account in a typical month. What's the net worth of parents' investments, and what's the net worth of their business?